Hello and welcome back to another week of astrology. My name is Henry Harrison, and we're going to take a quick look at the astrology of May 16th, Sunday, through May 22nd, Friday. Thank you for watching my videos. If you saw my Mercury retrograde video, it was a different experimental type of video. I'm going to do another experiment with this video in that we're going to look at it as a slide by slide chart view instead of manually operating the software at the time of recording. So I mostly made record of the major aspects as we go through the week so that we can look at each of them, each of their charts, instead of kind of ambiguously doing one more than the other, if that makes sense. So here's next week as well. So yeah, it's the first two slides I have. All right. Thank you for watching again. I really appreciate it, and it's really amazing to be a part of this community. It really is, to be thinking about these things with so many great contemporary minds. So I thank you for whatever you may be doing. Even if it's not astrology related, I appreciate if I follow you, whatever you do. I'm very grateful. So before we begin, I'd like to thank God, who gives wisdom that we can look into the mysteries of his heaven. And I pray that he will give us the understanding to look into them, and that good may come of it, in Jesus' name. Amen. So this week, on the basic, it's the moon in Cancer through the moon in Libra, and it's mostly themes with the moon throughout the week. There is the Venus conjoin the North Node, which I think is going to be extra stimulating in that way, but it's more of these themes we've already seen with the moon. Venus will trine Saturn on Wednesday, so there is this Saturn North Node theme that's been in the background, and Venus is going through all of that in a steadying way. This week we saw Mercury trine Saturn, and it was very grounding. Mercury is this ability to move between different energies and forces, and when it goes through Saturn like that, who's very cold, and not a hard angle, it was solidifying the air in a way. So it is what it is, but Venus will be going through a similar process after she goes to the North Node. All right, so the Sun will go into Gemini, and then on Friday, well, that's on Thursday, and then on Friday, he will make the square to Jupiter, which is, our personal energy is being enlivened by this new Jupiter. It also tells us that there are 30 more degrees before Jupiter goes retrograde. So this month of the Sun in Gemini is the time that we have to access these Jupiter direct forces and activities. So, this can be, Jupiter can rule abundance, seeing the way we see things, for good or bad. And I think we're being invited to really place our energy there, looking forward and dreaming about what is possible, because the trine basically unlocks of the Sun. The trine of the Sun basically unlocks Jupiter, Saturn, I think Mars as well, by the trine. And I say that like they're retrograde. It's as if it locks and unlocks when it goes through either trine side to the planet. This is one of those major moments where things are moving forward. They're changing. We have this new Jupiter perspective with Jupiter in Pisces that's very abundant, very possible. Things are possible. I wouldn't limit your perspective on what's possible during this time. I would really think big and dream big and open up to the possibilities that are coming in at this time that we couldn't see before when Jupiter was in Aquarius. So Jupiter in his home sign, very auspicious. With the sun there, with our personal energy being right there. All right, and at the end of the week, Mercury will make his first pass through the square to Neptune, which will be, as we talked about in the Mercury retrograde video, confusing and so on. And in that video, I brought out a sheet of paper that had on it the speeds that Mercury was going through. Well, by this week, Mercury, he's only completing 1 degree, 55 minutes, 46 minutes, I think, 30 some odd minutes. He's slowing down this week, so Mercury is slowing down. So this Mercury through Neptune will be a longer process than it seems like it will be at the time of recording. Mercury will not be able to move as quickly, and it will be foreshadowing, the Mercury retrograde, which is under the square to Neptune throughout it, really. And so Mercury is going to be kind of under the square more or less in one way or another from then on. So definitely be aware of that process. It's going to be happening as well. Okay, so that's the long and short. Looking forward to next week, Saturn officially stations retrograde. We have the moon, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn. Venus will make the square to Neptune as well. So this, like I said in the other video, this Venus conjunction to Mercury retrograde that's happening on the 28th, I believe. It's just not visible here, or the very early morning on the 29th. They're both pretty much under the square to Neptune, and it's going to be like that for some time, which poses its own set of challenges, right? So that's kind of looking forward, right? Okay, here we go. So you can see it here now. Mercury conjoin Venus. Mercury officially stations retrograde in the evening, while the moon is on top of Pluto. So, it will be, I will prepare for hardship. And it's interesting that, there's this difficulty that's coming through, that we have to go through this process of Mercury having to change direction while, highly auspicious Jupiter is in Pisces. So, it's a mixed bag, but, definitely I think on next week and throughout the time, it's more tuning into your awareness, tuning into the possibilities of thinking, visioning, seeing. I think the faculty of visioning will be enhanced, and our ability to access it will be as well. Okay, so we're starting off here on Sunday morning, right? So, the first thing here, the moon conjunct Mars, this is that time the moon is quite sensitive in Cancer, but he's picking up on, these changes that are happening in the Taurus area of life, and, Mars is a malefic, it's consumptive, it's consuming. Mars is energy that's driven, that accomplishes, but it often consumes. So, if it's connected to money, it's connected to this radical new thing in the finances. It's somehow related to that, and not financial advice, but I wouldn't expect it to be a gain in the market, particularly because of Mars there. Okay, so later on Sunday, the moon moves through the trine to Neptune, who is now ruled by Jupiter in Pisces. So we had the first taste of this when Jupiter moved into Pisces and the moon made the square to Neptune during the latter degrees of Gemini. If you're watching this on about when I'm recording, that's like Saturday, I think. You have to check, but I think that's the day that the moon is really going through that square to Neptune, ruled by Jupiter in Pisces. So, point being, we're going to get a taste of that then, and I think this is a much nicer experience of that. Although, there is the opposition to Pluto, which, is less comfortable and more connected to power situation. So those situations are definitely changing with Jupiter in Pisces. And what else to say about it? So by Monday, May 17th, the moon is moved through the sextile to the sun. So this is the first sextile to the sun. The sun is still in Taurus at this point, so I believe the moon is void of course off of that, which is kind of nice. And if you're still awake at that point, or in the later hours of Sunday, things could be I dare say pretty easy. It might not be as noticeable, but it is a pretty nice time to have this connection to power if you have to go through a situation like that. All right, so this is exact in the morning, technically the last aspect, moon opposite Pluto. So it's a standoff with power. It's not exactly an easy connection to power. It's like we're seeing things in a dreamy way, maybe at best a highly aware way, and we can connect to a power situation after that, pretty much after the moon gets off of Mars. But even because it's Neptune, there is a chance of deception. It is kind of rosy, but there is this opportunity to be involved in a power situation, basically. All right, so I believe I made note here that the sun was trine Pluto, so our personal energy is connected to this power situation in an easy way. Pluto started retrograding when the sun went through the square to Pluto, so, and I think it's not until the sun gets all the way back around that Pluto will be forward again. Correct me if I'm wrong. Well, I'll correct myself later, but that's something. The basic is that our personal energies, our vitality, can very easily be transformed with this Capricorn way. So this axis, or this trigon of Capricorn, Taurus, it could be easy to use your energy around like financial or planning matters as a basic. With the moon there, it may be forcing this situation of power in some way. All right. So on the morning of Monday, the moon will go into Leo, and immediately, well, let's see, there's another important thing here. Also looks like before the moon makes any aspects, the Venus moves through the North Node. So Venus is moving through the North Node and now applying to the trine to Saturn, right? So we can also see here from this graphic that Venus has about 2 more weeks from this point being in Gemini before she moves into Cancer, which is a good thing to know. We may as well make mention here that the Venus retrograde will be in Capricorn on December 19th. But, that's an aside. Basically, that's just what happened to load on the chart. So, but the basic of that is, Venus will move through this North Node position, extra stimulated before it goes into it, and it may have this sort of deflating malefic influence on the Venus function after she goes to the North Node, and it'll become more serious and about solidifying, I think, what you've been doing with Venus here. I think Saturn has an agenda to solidify things in Gemini to make this part of our lives more solid, and I think that'll be tested when the durability of that will be tested when Saturn goes into Pisces, oddly enough. So it is solidifying something here in that way when Venus goes through the trine to Saturn. All right, so back to the moon. The moon is going through, how many slides did I make of this? I guess I made 3. So the first one that perfects is, the trine and the sextile to the north, to the south and the north node. It's an easy way to connect to what we're doing with Venus there, even though if it's a little bit, less fun than we would like it to be. Probably the better energy was when this was building up. So, late in the evening on Monday night, we're into Tuesday now, right? So, I don't know what to say about that. It is somehow a fateful situation that's, going to be important for this lunar eclipse, right? So there may be something right here that you can decide, or a course of action you can commit to that has, a good fateful outcome, for the next 2 months or so, or the next month really, when, we go through the eclipse season. So I think these contexts are more important, and there may be a better opportunity on Tuesday to see a clear course of action, perhaps, or commit otherwise to a better way, a better fate in a sense. Okay, so at 5 a.m. on Tuesday, the moon will go through this trine, the sextile to Venus, and will also make the square to Uranus in the morning as well. And in this opposition to Saturn is also building up in the morning. So we have that, but the moon is also picking up on this T-square with Saturn stationing retrograde and Uranus. So we have another round of this fixed sign difficulty, and Saturn is intensifying with this, and Uranus is moving forward. So it could be, search for the durable in it, but what we're doing probably has more critically to do with these changes in Taurus, these inventive things in Taurus, right? But there is this cooling effect on all of it in general because Saturn is going through there, the moon is going through there. What else to say? It could be cold, weather-wise. I've noticed a trend with these Saturn configurations, and it just being colder outside, or we have these cold fronts come through. But I'm not practicing that branch of astrology exactly, so hard to say about that. But we get into the late evening of Tuesday, and the moon will perfect the sextile to Mercury. So as the moon was moving through Leo on this day, there probably was, opportunity to use, boldness is a good expression of Leo. Boldness to break through the situation, Uranus and Taurus, using that courage function. But, there may be something to say about it now. Like, we've gone through this, and there may be a communication to get out right now, or otherwise a good connection to that type of business, even though Mercury is very slow at this point. So just see about 15, 16, 17 hours, Mercury has gone, Mercury has gone 30 degrees. So Mercury is decidedly slowing down at this point. Okay, so sorry about all that flipping, but so the moon will go through the first quarter square to the sun, it's the half moon, the quarter moon, so to speak. I'll get those terms down at some point. The moon is applying out of sign to the opposition to Jupiter at the same time. So I think on Wednesday, there is an opportunity. Well, there's a critical situation that's come up to our attention, to our awareness around this, where we have the opportunity to use our personal energies to expand in this really limitless way. Is a way to put Jupiter in Pisces. I mean, we're really going to get a taste of it, especially at this moment, what this can mean, and especially as Mercury is ruling the moon here. I mean, this square will perfect before that rulership changes, but I think we're energetically seeing it on Wednesday. All right, so I made this slide to show that the moon would go void of course after that and enter Virgo. Okay. And then perfect the opposition to Jupiter. So there is a big jolt of Jupiter energy for this area, even though the ruler is squaring Neptune. It's very slow. There is something. Jupiter is supporting this situation in a new way that we haven't seen before. All right, so by the evening, it looks like I made note here of Venus trine Saturn. This Venus is going through this cooling process. We may be cooling off for this Gemini. Could be, the streets, cars, environment, the neighborhood, your general flitting back and forth social energy, is going through this cooling process, and things might cool off in that way, but they might become solid in a way that's durable. So I will look out for that as well on Wednesday evening, I believe. Let me make sure. Wednesday, right. Okay, so on May 20th, Thursday, by the late morning, before noon, the moon will go through the T-square to the nodal pair and will enter the trine to Uranus. So there's another fateful situation around this Uranus and Taurus situation. It was brought to my attention recently that, of course, the nodes will be transitioning into Taurus and Scorpio in the next year, and the eclipses will be with Jupiter and Uranus there together in Taurus. So there is this connection to the nodes and to Uranus to tap into and be aware of, especially as Mercury is becoming less and less about ordinary business in a way and becoming more about awareness. That's one way to talk about it. Okay, so the sun is moving into Gemini on the afternoon of May 20th, and he'll go into, a month later, of course, go into Cancer. So like we talked about earlier, this Gemini season is pretty much setting the bounds for how long Jupiter is going to be in direct in Pisces, right? So we have this sun energy in Gemini, Jupiter direct in Pisces. The sun has come off this square to Jupiter, so I think that Jupiter is in a way encouraging the sun, like use this up, like do this thing. The possibilities are there, the opportunities are there. Just keep going, keep going and keep believing, really. Okay, so in the late afternoon on May 20th, Thursday, the moon will perfect the square to Venus in Gemini, and that's what this slide is. Okay, so that, we're picking up on this cooling thing. It's interesting because the moon is making a trine to Uranus, who's making a square to Saturn, and Saturn is making a trine to Venus, who's making a square to the moon. So we have this interesting angular relationship, which, on the other side of that is the quincunx between the Saturn and the moon. So they're not really beholding each other right now. That kind of stuff all kind of got dealt with in a more difficult way during the Leo transit. But now there's this challenging but easy transformative situation with these different energies. So, I think there's an opportunity here, but there is a challenge to not go overboard, perhaps with a type of spending or a type of consumption that might be possible at this time. But there is an inventive situation that is connected to a sense of order, Virgo, disciplining the. I think Virgo has a connotation of discipline, doing the organizational thing at this time, perhaps in a new way, could have interesting and fatal consequences down the line. So that's what I have for that on Thursday. So later on Thursday, towards the evening, or at night really, at around 10 o'clock, the moon will perfect the sextile to Mars before he makes the square to Mercury, I believe, which doesn't perfect until Friday at 7 a.m., just about. So around 10 o'clock in the evening here, the moon in Virgo has an opportunity to, take action around these organizational ideas, perhaps in an easy way, or it's easy to, kind of get into the flow of organizing within like your protected activity sphere, Mars in Cancer. And it's getting more and more critical. There is a need to do this organizational stuff, and Mercury, the ruler of the moon this whole time, is moving into the square to Neptune and so on. So there could be this dreaminess that comes in rounds about it. So I wouldn't take it extremely seriously. I would just be aware and kind of organize in a way that seems best at the time, really. But there is that difficulty. Mercury is going to have less and less dignity as we go along. So even though he's in his own house, by being retrograde, being stationary under the square to Neptune, and so on. Okay, so yes, the moon will perfect this square to Mercury and this opposition to Neptune on Friday. That's our next aspect. That's mostly in the morning. The moon is being ruled by that Mercury. So there is a critical, confusing situation, messages not being delivered, difficulty around that, difficulty to organize, difficulty to find that order, and so on. So if it's not there, there is this difficulty. It's kind of in orb all day, and it's being ruled by that. So that's that is a possible challenge or hindrance that could be coming up at this time. So let's see, what node is this? Okay, the Sun square to Jupiter will perfect at this time. So we talked about that earlier, but this has been building up. For some reason I thought that it had already perfected, which doesn't make sense, but yeah, it does perfect at this time. It's been building up, so the Sun has been getting this encouragement from Jupiter, and I think in the way the Sun is helping Jupiter. The Sun isn't in bad dignity. He's not really under the beams of like a malefic or anything. He is going to move through the trine to Saturn later on, but this is a boost to our energy. I think it's a boost to believing that we can do it, even if it's difficult or confusing, and so on. And later on during the day, around 3 o'clock, the moon will perfect the trine to Pluto, which is an easy, transformative situation with power, and the sun is also there with the trine too. So, we can really put our organization and our power energies at work here, but don't keep it grounded. Basically, I think if you're trying to do all this stuff, but it's not grounded, you're kind of frittering your energies at this point. So there is an opportunity to use power, but it's it could be within an illusory context. But I think that's less likely, seeing that there is this grand trine being formed, which will be a strong energy either way. The moon will be void of course off that trine to Pluto, and you could consider him void of course off of Mercury, and that would have been all day at this point in that case. So it's kind of a void of course moon before, but it really is after about 3 o'clock. Okay, so the moon will move into Libra, and then I believe he will immediately perfect the trine to the sun. So this is, it may have been, more of that confusion stuff will go away, and there is an opportunity by the end of the day on Friday to really get tuned into that, I think, or it's been building up to that all day. That confusion stuff might kind of go away once the moon goes into Libra. Just so you know, that's at 10 o'clock Central Time. Then the moon will go into Libra. So it could be easier, less confusing at this time, now that rulership is kind of out of the way, as long as you're not trying to use Mercury. So there was an opportunity to use Mercury more on, Thursday, Friday, even though it's, has this difficulty, right? But there is this more of an opportunity with Venus themes, and they can come out. But it is connected to Mercury, since the sun is in Mercury's house, square Jupiter. But, that's the long and short of it. Okay, so by Saturday, it looks like we didn't really have an aspect, except for this on Saturday, where the moon will make the trine to the north node, sextile the south node, and also trine Saturn. So we've had this before. This is that cooling effect that we've seen on the Libra area, steadying, encouraging durability, and so on. So, I think, there is an opportunity this week to really make progress, but it has to be within realms that are decidedly real. And when they're not, focus more on the immaterial side, less of the material side of things, right? So that will come about in the evening or in the late afternoon. There is this other, like we had this moon in Leo that was connected to the north and south node in a good way, a positive way, so to speak. There is a way to steady that, I think, or to create a sense of steadiness for these eclipses that are coming up at this time, if you're aware of it. So the moon will go through the trine to Saturn, and that will perfect around 7 o'clock p.m., steadying, cooling off. It'll be a cooler time to endure, basically. And it's not a difficult thing. It's not really a difficult situation exactly. I mean, there is this moon square to Mars that is going to perfect, I believe, on, it must be the next day, right? So that difficulty is building up, but this isn't a particularly difficult situation, and you can connect your, looks like, Venus, Saturn, Moon can all be doing a very durable thing at this time, right? Okay. So this note was made for, it looks like, this note was made for Mercury square to Neptune, so this will perfect at this time. So the Mercury function will go through the things we talked about in the last video, misunderstanding, miscommunication, unwanted circumstances arising from a miscommunication or misunderstanding, So keeping your conversation grounded in reality would be the best that we can do. Mercury is quite slow at this point. He stations retrograde at 24 degrees about. So it's getting very slow and very dreamy at this time, which is hard to kind of see from where we are right now, but it is going to come in more and more. And I think we're already seeing it. At least, I think I have at least. So, but it'll definitely be more noticeable at this time. Okay, so the moon will first perfect the trine on, well, I guess we're on Sunday now. The moon will perfect the trine to Mars, or to Venus, in the very early morning on Sunday, about 1:30. And you know, if you're awake at that time, you know this is that time. You know, it's cooled off with Saturn. I mean, it's all under the trine to Saturn, so I dare say it's a good thing. But you know, it won't be as, you know, light or social as it otherwise could be. It's held back by this cold Saturn influence, right? And then the moon will move through the square to Mars, so you know there's this difficulty around that. And we have that one time, and actually the moon will not come all the way back to Mars before he moves into Leo. It's a pretty short Mars and Cancer transit, but you know, it could be some not fun situations with society that could come up at this time, but meh, it's kind of in the middle of the night, so we might not see very much of it. It might be just a little bit crabby in the morning, right, on Sunday, maybe. Okay, so the moon will go through the trine to Mercury on Sunday, and there'll be a good opportunity to communicate in the morning on Sunday to get that message across. What Mercury has to say at this point might be misconstrued, even though it's very easy, transformative process. Venus is applying to Mercury, not perfecting yet, but that energy is approaching Mercury. So I mean, Mercury is going to have something to say about these value situations, these you know, these enjoyable, fun things that like really make socializing like worthwhile, right? So that could be coming out on Sunday. Okay, I think that's all I have. That's the last slide. I thank you for listening to this report. I hope it was helpful for you. God bless you, and I'll catch you on the next one.